Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to talk about how to create an Animal Crossing style time management scheduling system inside of Godot. So we're going to go through the process of how to get our OS time. We're going to talk about how to create a nice signal system for that OS get time, and we are going to go ahead and round it out by creating a task system that dynamically calls our functions. So that's what I have in store for you guys today. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to plan this out. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a small time manager here. And this time manager is going to go ahead and keep track of all the times and do events that are based off of time, right? So it's going to have a couple of events here. It's going to have something like a minute has passed. It's going to have a time such as like an hour has passed, or maybe a day, or maybe a month, right? So a minute has passed, an hour has passed, a day has passed, and maybe a month has passed. We could actually add in year if we really want to, but I'm doubting that people are going to be playing our game for a year at one stent of time. So I think we'll be okay. But we'll kind of drag these down here and say that here's the events that this guy can have, right? And our NPCs is going to have a schedule object, okay? So this schedule object, and I don't know what I'm going to make my schedule object. I guess we could just make it a list here. So they're going to have a little schedule here. And what it's going to say is like at 2, go to block A, right? At 3, go to block B. And let's say something like at 2:30, go to block C, right? And so it's going to have this little schedule that it's going to use. And the NPC is going to have a little bit of logic here that's going to pull back our schedule. So what's going to happen is min pass is going to connect to NPC. So we'll say that this is an NPC job here, right? And we'll say check schedule time. And what's going to happen is every minute that passes, it's going to emit an event that says, hey, I'm going to check my scheduled time. Okay. And that will allow us to keep track of what has been ran and what hasn't. Once a schedule object is ran, it'll probably get pulled out of the queue and just no longer exist, right? When an hour has passed, it's probably going to go out to the NPC. So we'll drag this out and pull this down. It'll go out to the NPC, and the NPC is going to need to pull all minute schedule items into our schedule list here, right? So what we'll probably need is we'll probably need two lists. We'll probably need our current schedule and our future schedule. And that's going to give us a little bit more flexibility. I know that a lot of people think that's probably unnecessary, but our current schedule will only be used in our schedule time area. So it'll only be used here. And our future schedule will be used here. So we'll just drag a line to our future schedule item here. So we'll just kind of drag this down. And that will allow us to basically keep track of two schedules, things that are going to happen in the next little bit and things that are going to happen in the future. That way we can keep some efficiency here, because what we're going to need to do is when we do our check schedule time, we're going to need to loop through all of our current schedule and make sure that none of them match the minute that has passed, right? But we don't want to necessarily loop through our future schedule, because if we loop through our future schedule, it could be thousands and thousands and thousands of things, and we don't necessarily want to do that because it's going to be extremely slow. So what we can do is we can house that data here, and we can check our schedule time against just our current schedule. And then when an hour passes, we can check our future schedule and pull that data into our check schedule, pull it into our little, current schedule here. Now we can do the same thing when a day passes if we really want to. I don't know if we're going to go through that with this tutorial, but we could have something like future past a day schedule. And then we could say future 24-hour schedule, right? And that future past a day schedule would basically just be when a day has passed, loop through our future past day schedule and insert it into our 24-hour schedule. And that'll basically allow us to keep these schedules up to date, if that makes sense. Now, we're only going to do the first two. You guys can go ahead and implement the third one if you want to, but I'm not thinking that people are going to play this game for longer than, 24 hours. So I don't think we need to necessarily pull that data. So I think that's going to be our plan, if that makes sense to you guys. So let's go ahead and jump in and get coding. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create our scene. So we're going to go ahead and add a 3D scene. And I'm going to right click on our spatial node, attach a script to it, and I'm going to call it Time Manager. And Time Manager is going to, on a loop, check what our time is. So we'll go ahead and come down here and we'll say func underscore physics process delta. And the reason why I'm using physics process delta is because I don't necessarily need it to run every single process. I don't want it to run off of the frame. I kind of want to run off the physics frame instead. So it's a little bit, there's less looping going on, less information getting pulled from the operating system at a time. So what we'll say is os.get date time. And we need to go ahead and assign that to a variable. So we'll go ahead and say time is equal to OS date time. We'll go ahead and make that a variable. And then let's go ahead and print our time here so we can actually see what it looks like. So I'm going to save my spatial node. I'm going to hit play and I'm going to select my current. And you'll see that we now have our date time being populated, which is awesome. But how will we know if time has elapsed? Well, the easiest way to know if time's elapsed is we have to check our time against an old time, right? So we'll come up here and we'll type var old time, and we'll go ahead and say, hey, if time dot, and we'll say, you can see down here, minute, so we'll say minute, does not equal old time, then print time. And we're going to need to go ahead and set old time equal to time. And that will allow us to have a little bit of flexibility here. And this needs to actually be set to old time.minute. That way we can keep our consistency here. So we'll go ahead and hit play, and you'll notice that it crashes and says, hey, we can't get that index, right? And the reason why is because this is null. We haven't set it yet. So we can either do one of two things. We can either run is equal to os.getDateTime up here, or maybe in our ready, or we can check it in our physics process. It's up to you guys. I'm going to go ahead and do it in my ready just because it's a little easier. So I'm going to say old time is equal to os.getDateTime. And I will go ahead and save that. Now, if we refresh and we let this run, you'll notice that nothing's going on in my screen here. The reason why is because a minute hasn't passed. So I'm going to let this run through, and actually it just ran through. So you can see now we have hour, minute 24. And if we let this run through again, which I will allow it to run through right now, and I'll jump to it, you'll see that it goes to 25. Okay, and you will see that it says, if I close this, day 14, hour 14, minute 24, minute 25, 1 month, 0 seconds, weekday 5, years 2022. So that's basically the basis of how we're going to do this. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, anytime a minute, hour, month, or day goes by, I want you to go ahead and print time. And that will allow us to get our event system going. So what we're going to do is we'll say if time dot month does not equal old time dot month, then go ahead and print time. We're going to do the exact same thing, just over and over for all of them. So let's just do that. And then let's shift tab. We'll say month day here, and then we will say hour. All right. I'm going to pull this down so you guys can see a little bit better. Maybe I should zoom in a tiny bit as well. So let me just do that. And let me close my output right here. So from here, we can go ahead and start emitting our signals. So if you remember from our diagram, everyone's going to listen to these signals, and these signals are going to tell us that the time has changed, right? So we're going to come in here and say signal time min has changed. And then we'll say signal time hour has changed. And actually, I'm just going to copy and paste those. And we'll say day, and we will say month. Now, there's a reason why I did this order down here. And that's because if minute has changed, it's going to fire off the minute signal, right? But there are some things that are more important with like month or day, right? Let's say it's a special day or the day ticks over. I might need to load some special data. It's a good idea to have this happen first, then do your minute stuff afterwards. That way you your minute stuff doesn't run before your month stuff, because there's possibilities that you might miss some scheduled maintenance there, some scheduled thing, if that makes sense. So from here, let's go ahead and emit our signals here. So what we can do is we can say month emit signal time month has changed, and we'll go ahead and pass in time. That way we can pass time to our other objects so that they know what the time is. So they don't have to go and fetch it or look for it or anything like that. They just already have it. And we can do the same thing here. So emit signal time day has changed, comma, time. Emit signal time hour has changed. And the last one is emit signal time min has changed. And that's going to go ahead and emit all of these signals for us. So that way we can just have our timing process emit signals and say, here's the time, here's the minute, here's how things are set up and stuff like that, if that makes sense. So now you might be wondering, well, you're updating old time here, but you're not updating it here, right? Why is that? And the reason why is because if we update it up here, none of these other signals will fire below it. So for instance, if we did it up here and the month changed, day, hour, and minute wouldn't fire. So if something were to happen on the 1st of the month at midnight, it wouldn't fire if we looked at the minute, hour, or day, because we've set our time up here, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And we're going to go ahead and do a little bit of coding, and it'll make a lot more sense once I actually like code the NPC controller here, and you guys will go, oh, I get it. It makes more sense. So we'll go ahead and go to our spatial node. We'll right click, add in a child node. We're going to add in a mesh, and we will add in a mesh instance here. We're going to go ahead and click and add in a small cube here. We're also going to right click, add in a camera, and we can pull this camera back something like this and pull it over here. And what I'm going to do, if I preview this camera, that's probably not far enough back. So we'll go ahead and pull it back a little bit farther. Got a bit more space. That'll work. We'll pull this up. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, you need to move over here at a specific time, right? So we'll go ahead and right click our spatial node. We'll add in a position 3D. We'll go ahead and pull this over here. And then we're going to duplicate that and bring it over here. So we'll just call this right position, and we'll go ahead and call this left position. And we're going to need to call these. So we'll get to that point in a minute, but that's basically the basis of how we're going to do this. So we'll go ahead and right click our mesh instance. We'll go ahead and right click and attach a script and say npc.gd. And I'm doing that because my guess is if we're running things on a schedule, it's usually not the player, it's NPCs or other things like that. So go ahead and hit enter. And we need to go ahead and connect our signals first, right? So we'll go ahead and say timemanager.connect, right? But that wouldn't work, right? Because we can't just call out to our spatial node because it's above us. So let's go ahead and go to our node. Let's go to our group and go ahead and add in a time manager to this group. And we're probably going to need to do the same thing for our left position. And we're probably going to do the same thing for our right position. All right, so that'll give us the ability to kind of grab this information. So we'll go back to our mesh instance and we'll say var time manager is equal to get tree.get nodes in group, and we'll go ahead and pull back time manager 0, and that'll pull back our time manager. So that should be correct. Time manager, yep, that looks to be about correct. So we'll go ahead and say time manager dot connect, and we will go ahead and pass in these signals we want to connect. So in our case, if we go to our time manager, we have time min has changed, and we need to go ahead and pass it to an object. So we'll say self, and we need to call a function. So we'll say underscore on underscore, and I'll just copy this, paste it, and that should be it. Let's see, is it mad at me? Missing a comma right here, so we'll go ahead and do that. We will duplicate this and say time hour has changed and time hour has changed. All right, and we're going to go ahead and make these functions. So copy that and say func on time min has changed, and we're going to need to pass in time because that's what it requires. And we will go ahead and say pass for right now, and we'll do the same thing. Func on time hour has changed, and we will say time. All right, so from here, we need to go ahead and just see if this works. So we'll go ahead and print NPC caught signal. All right, let's see if that runs. So we'll go ahead and run this and wait for a minute, and we will see what happens. All right, you will see that we have a log here that says NPC has caught the signal, and I think I spelled signal wrong, but that's because I'm awful at spelling. So that's fine. I think it's signal. But from here, we need to check to see if that time is the time that we're looking for. And since this is on time min, let's go ahead and say if time dot minute is equal to, let's say, in this case, I'm going to say 37, then print that time is 37 min, and then we'll say else if time minute is equal to 38, then print time is 38 min. So now you'll see if we run this, when 37 rolls around, when time, when 30, because it's 2:36 right now. So when 2:37 happens, it's going to go ahead and fire off our 37 code. Okay, you can see it's 2:37 now, and you can see time is 37 minutes because it ran this specific thing. Now, this is really cool and all, but it's not doing anything special, right? So let's make it do something fancy. So let's come up here and let's say var min tasks, okay? And we're going to make this into an object, and this is going to be like a task list for us to do. So first, we're going to have to name our task. So let's just call it move left, okay? And then we'll go ahead and put in curly braces here, and we need to first give it time, right? It needs to have a time to start. like an execution time. We'll make that into an object, and we got to give it an hour. And we'll say something like 2. And then we have to give it a minute, so comma, and then we'll go quote minute. And we'll go ahead and say 40, comma. We have to give it a month, right? So we can make sure that it runs, in a month. So we'll say 1. And then we have to give it a day. So we'll go ahead and say today. So we'll say the 14th in our case. And then we have to give it a year, right? And we'll say not 3030, 2022. And from here, we can go ahead and hit comma, enter, and we'll give it a task. Okay, in our case, our task will be move left, right? And then let's go ahead and duplicate this and go ahead and make our move right task. And we'll go ahead and say, instead of 40, let's say 41. Okay. And from here, we're going to need to pull back our tasks. So we don't need any of this anymore. But what we can say is we got to pull back all those tasks, loop through them, and see if they match our minutes. So we'll say for min task in min tasks dot value. Then I want to say, hey, if min task dot time dot minute is equal to our time dot minute. And if it is, I want to go ahead and print our task. So we'll say min task dot task. And that'll go ahead and fire that off. So we'll go ahead and hit play. And we've already missed the window for 240. It is 240 right now, but we do have 241. So you'll see that move right should fire off here in a minute or so. And you'll see right here, it says move left. Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted, right? So it actually ran our, well, it's our move right task, but it's move left in our case. We named it moved left. That's my fault. But it fired off our move right task. So if we set this to 43 and 44, we come down here, how do we go about executing arbitrary code with this, right? How can we go about executing the code so that way when time flies, we can actually move our character? Well, what we can do is we can use what's called a call function. So we'll say call min task dot task, okay? And call calls a function by name. So what I'm doing here is I'm pointing out a function that I want to be called. So let's copy this name. Let's come down here and say func move left. We'll go ahead and move to the left, right? So what we can do is we can right click on our spatial node. Let's add in, so we can right click on our mesh instance, add in a tween, because I'm going to want to tween this. And let's go ahead and hit $tween dot interpolate property. And we'll go ahead and say self, comma, quote, transform, comma, get tree dot get nodes in group. And we will go ahead and say left position, so left pose. I believe we're going to the left, right? So left pose. And we'll go ahead and get back the first instance of that, dot transform, comma, and we'll go ahead and say how long do we want it to be. So I'm going to say 1 second, comma, tween dot translinear. Now go ahead and comma and type tween, whoops, comma space, and we'll just go ahead and grab this one, translinear. That seems fine. So that's going to go ahead and move us to that location. And we'll go ahead and hit $tween dot start. And we'll go ahead and copy this. We'll go ahead and paste it because I don't want to do additional code here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my move right. We're going to go that. And then instead of left pose, we're going to say right pose. All right. And now I'm going to look at my time. It is 2:44. So we'll say 45 and 46. We'll save. And we'll go ahead and run this and see what it does. So you can see my box here. And let's see what 45, when 45 rolls around, what's going to happen. Oh, and we have ourselves an error here. So let's go ahead and take a look at our error. Transform does not match final type float, final value type float. So we have a problem here. So let's see. Transform, self. I think we're missing our starting position, aren't we? We are, yes, we're missing our starting position. So we'll go ahead and add that in. So we'll say transform, and that'll go ahead and allow us to start from a location. So we'll go ahead and grab this, copy it, hit space, paste, Control S, and let's go ahead and change this to 47. So it'll probably start with move right first, but that's okay. So go ahead and refresh this and let's see what it does. You'll see that it moved to the left, which, let me see, did I make a mistake here? Right position, left position, move right. What did I set that to? Oh, I did set it to move left. Okay, so yeah, that makes sense because minute 47, it's 47. Which this should be 48 then, so it's not going to work for us for what we're trying to do. But you did see that it did move when we switched over to 47. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. Now, what if we wanted it to happen every minute? What if we wanted something to happen every single minute? Well, what we could do is we could set this to a value like 61 and then have a special case in here. So, or mintask.time.minute is equal to 61, and that'll allow us to go ahead and do that as well. So from here, every time a minute runs, it'll look for anything that has 61, and then bam, it's going to run it. Sweet. So that's the basics of how to do this. Now we're going to do a little bit more fanciness. You saw in the diagram I planned out for a check for the 24-hour schedule. So let's do that. Hey guys, this is Editor Mitch talking here. Before we get too far into this, something that I don't cover is adding in a time variable or something like that up in the upper right hand corner so that the user can see what time it is. I think that would probably be helpful for you guys. So if you go ahead and right click, add in a child node, and go ahead and add in a control node, and let's go ahead and just kind of put it somewhere here, and then right click, add in a child node, and add in a rich text label. And let's go ahead and just say date/time. And what we can do is we can kind of pull this over here, something like that. And we'll go ahead and duplicate our rich text label, and we'll pull this down, and this is where we're going to put our date time. So what we can do is we can go ahead and right click our control node, attach a script, and just call it, date time interface manager, because I love my managers. And we'll go ahead and just subscribe to that event like we did before. So what we can do is we can go ahead and say get tree dot get nodes in group quote, and I believe I called it, I forgive me, it's been like a while since I looked at this code for a minute. So go ahead and I believe I called it time manager. Let me check real quick. Time manager. So we'll do that, and then we'll get back the first instance of that, and we will go ahead and say dot connect, and we'll put quote time min has changed, comma self, comma quote underscore on time min changed. And I believe that's all we need. So we'll go ahead and grab this and create a function here. And we'll paste that in, and then we'll go ahead and pass in our time variable. Then we're going to go ahead and hit $, and I don't like rich text label too, so I'll say date time value and date time label. And we'll go back here and we will re-hit our $, date time value dot text is equal to our text here. So we can actually just go ahead and say time dot, and I will say hour plus, and we'll go ahead and put quote, colon, quote, and then plus time dot minute, and that should go ahead and allow for that. So if we hit play, and you guys will probably get a little bit of preview here, but once our time ticks, it should pop this up and populate it. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, and we'll see. And it did not work because I forgot to cast this as a string. That's my fault. So we'll go ahead and pull that. And what I'm going to do is on startup, I'm actually going to go ahead and do this. So I'm going to say on time, on underscore time min changed, os dot get time. And that'll just pull back our get date time. And we'll refresh this and run it. And you'll see that it's 15:16. So when time ticks over, it'll go ahead and say 15:17. And that's basically how we can do it. And there you go. You can see 15:17. So perfect. That's what we want. So go ahead and close this, and I will let you guys get right back to the video. Thanks. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll up here, and we're going to add in a new object here. So we're going to say var, and we'll say our tasks is equal to, and I really am awful at capitalizing today. There we are. We'll go ahead and duplicate a couple of these guys, so that way we can actually just have some data here. We'll go ahead and say time hour, and we'll go ahead and say something like 3, and we'll go ahead and say something like 4. And we'll set our minute to 61, so it fires every time. And we'll go ahead and set our minute here to 0 and save. And that's just going to allow us to say, hey, at 4 o'clock, run this. And every minute after this hour, which is 3, then run this. Now, if I remember correctly, it's actually hour 14, so it would actually be 15. So we'll go ahead and say 15 here and 16 here. And we'll go ahead and come down here and say, hey, when an hour has changed, let's go ahead and pull some tasks out of here. So we'll say var new min tasks is equal to a new object. We'll say for our task in, and we will go ahead and grab our tasks here. We'll scroll down here. It'll say in our tasks dot key. Then we need to go ahead and check the hours. So if our task dot time dot hour is equal to time dot hour. And what that's going to do is it's going to check against our tasks. I know you're wondering why the key, right? Well, the reason why is because we need to pull back the key. So that way, when we insert it into our minimum tasks, we have to name it something, right? We can't just have a task that doesn't have a name. So it's just best to just grab the key that you already had here. So that's what I'm doing here. So what we can do now is we can say new min task, our task is equal to our tasks, open braces, and our task. And that's just going to go ahead and pull that back. Okay. And if we want to do a reoccurring one, we can say if, and we'll just pull this right here. And we'll just say instead of time hour, we'll say 25. Then we'll do the exact same thing down here. There we go. So now we just missed the hour task. In my case, it's now 3 o'clock. So I'm going to go ahead and just allow it to skip over, if that makes sense. I'm just going to call it directly. So we'll say min tasks is equal to new min tasks. I should probably spell this correct. There we go. Much better, much better. So now I'm going to call this directly because there's no way I can ever run this in time. So we'll just come down here or come up here and go ahead and fire this off. And we're going to pass in os.get time date time. We'll go ahead and just pass that in. And I'll put a breakpoint here so you guys can kind of see what it's doing. So what we'll do is we'll just hit play and we'll let it run through. And you'll see it's going to pull back all of our tasks. You can see right here with our keys. So you can see it's pulling back all of our hour tasks. And we'll come through and it'll check if our task is equal to our hour task. And it is, so it's going to add it. So if you check our new min tasks, you can see that move left has been added because it's hour 15. It's 3 o'clock, so that makes sense. And if we come through here, it checks the next one. It doesn't match because the time is actually 16, not 15, so it's not going to run it. And then it goes ahead and sets the new minute tasks to the minute task that we have. And if we let that run through, you'll see at 3:02, it's going to go ahead and run our minute task, which we can actually put a breakpoint here if we'd like, and I can show you guys how that's going to go. So you'll see that the minute has passed. It's going to step over, and it's going to call that function. So it's going to move this guy over. And the reason why it called, even though it's 3:02, it's because we set this to 61. So it's going to fire off every minute forever. Or at least until the task gets pulled out. From here, we can do the same thing for hours, months, years. It doesn't matter. We could just do it all the way down. So if we really wanted to, we could Control-C, Control-V, time, day has changed, on time, day has changed. And we can just grab this, come down here, and basically copy paste what we have. So we can just do this, F-U-N-C, not F-U-C-N, and we can copy this, paste it, literally just grab this, copy it, paste, and then we can say new, and I like to keep this stuff clean, so our task, and we can just drop that in here, and we can say here, our tasks is equal to our new hour task. I think that will work. Oh, we got to set this correctly. So we would need to come up here and basically copy this and paste it and call it day tasks. And we can go ahead and grab this and paste it in here. And change this to time.day. And that's pretty much it. And we can set this to if it's equal to something like 35 for the day, right? And that would allow us to have that flexibility, if that makes sense. Now we also need to set this to day tasks, not hour tasks. And we would need to set day task right here. There. And that basically would do it for us. And we would set this to new day tasks. There we go. And that basically would be how you would do a on day change, right? On daytime change. And that's basically it, really. I mean, the system is pretty simple, but it works fairly well for what we need it to do. In our day tasks, we could say, okay, on day, 15 and day 17, right? I want you to do these things specifically. Same thing with weekdays. We could do the same thing if we wanted to have like a specific weekday. We could just say on, the weekday, right? Day 5 of the weekday, do this, right? On Friday. But that's pretty much how it works. It's simple enough. We could actually set this to 6 and 7 and get rid of this. And you'll see that everything works just fine. And I would have to let this thing run for an entire hour for you to see it, tick over and do the next task list, if that makes sense. But that's basically how it works. You'll see that it moved to the left. And now you'll see that it moved to the right. Simple enough. So that's pretty much it. What I suggest is that you dive these out into a JSON file somewhere where you can actually pull back your tasks and then just sync them up and throw them in here. But I mean, that's pretty much it. It's really a simple system. And if you really wanted to, you could go through and instead of doing the hour, day, min system like what I have here, you could just check here if you wanted to and say, hey, if hour and if day and if minute match up, then go ahead and call this task. You could do that if you wanted to. But this system is a slightly more efficient when it comes to looping through things. You don't have to loop through as much data. So it's up to you on which one you would like. But that's pretty much it. So if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button. Hey, if you dislike this video, go ahead and hit that dislike button because I am here to make content for you guys. This video, as with all of my videos, is a viewer suggestion. So if you have any viewer suggestions, please throw them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to get to them in a future video. And hey, if you have any questions about this or any comments, please throw them in the comments below and I'll be more than happy to answer any of them. Or you can jump onto my Discord and I would love to talk to you there. But that is all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Thanks.